All right, well, my name is Jonathan Janz. Hello. This is not ordinarily how I look at readings, but not even the ones at my house. But here's the thing. Some of you are going to be able to relate to this. I'll just be honest here. First of all, I have pandemic hair, which is why I'm wearing my hat. All right? If you want something truly scary, just skip the reading that's about to happen and take a gander at this. It's so bad. Anyway, it's even worse than I thought it was. I am going to be, the reason I have pandemic hair, here's the deal. I have that hair because there was a project. I'm not going to say which project it is. Like a home project. I don't know about home improvement, but it's a home related project. And I was just sure that I could do it. I didn't need to hire it out. I could tackle it. And it has just been such a rabbit hole and time suck and source of frustration for days. Days! Anyway, that's why I look like this. I'm all grubby and I need to do this reading though. So here we go. Basic scenario. The novel is called The Raven and it comes out in September the 8th. From Flame Tree Press. It is, I think, the first time I've destroyed the world. I think every horror author has to do that at least once, right? Brian Keene did that with The Rising. Stephen King did that with The Stand. Let's not talk too much about that because it hits too close to home. I'm doing it at least for the first time with The Raven. So here's the basic scenario of what's going on. And also, just as an aside, I'm trying to read, I've done several readings of The Raven, but I want each one to be unique and new and different. So not only is the hat different and the grubbiness different, but this is a chapter I've never read before anywhere. I mean, not with a camera in front of me. So basic scenario of the book, then we'll get rolling on the... My hands are freakishly large. I mean, they're not small to begin with. They're relatively large hands. I can palm a basketball decently. More with my left hand than my right, though, which is very inconvenient because I jump off my left foot. Okay. Anyway, but today my hands look just really gigantic. Don't they look like I look like some sort of sci-fi monster coming at you? And the shirt, Quint's shark fishing. Yeah! Woo! Okay. Here we go. Basic scenario, then we're going to get reading, is this. We have the world destroyed, and the world gets destroyed by this plot, by a group of radical scientists, geneticists, nuclear physicists, even anthropologists. And they have figured out that much of what we call junk DNA is actually these long dormant parts of our DNA that once made people monsters. And this novel posits that in the past, vampires, werewolves, cannibals, satyrs, all these different monsters were real. And through many millennia, they have either been, like we've evolved out of them, or they've been hunted, and then as a matter of survival, they've kind of gone dormant. But now they're awakened. And within a month of this attack, everybody has either turned into a monster or been killed by one. So my main character, Des, is what's called a latent, which means he has no powers that have manifested themselves. So, and he doesn't really have any powers at all, at least at this point. So he's just trying to survive. And he's also trying to find, he's lost almost everyone dear to him, and he is trying to get back this woman that he loves named Susan. So before that can happen, he's walking around. This is the first chapter of the book. He's walking around the forest, and he meets a man and a son and this other guy named Gentry. So he meets three guys. And they are discovered by three cannibals. Cannibals in the world of this book are, obviously they're flesh-eating beings, but they also grow more powerful when they devour the flesh of another man. So what happens here is the three cannibals, Paul, Stomper, and then this other one, Paul and Stomper kill both the man and his son, and leaving a third. And the third cannibal has taken Dez around the neck and put a gun to his head. Dez is able to headbutt him in the nose, break his nose, and then flee with Gentry. Okay, so Dez and Gentry, no special powers. They're fleeing from the cannibal whose nose got broken. So one cannibal fleeing two people, but the cannibals are really ferocious and powerful. So this is actually chapter 3 now of The Raven. So here we go. Chapter 3, Whiplash is the title. I've started to looking for my water. I've started to label my chapter titles. I started to do that, I think, with Children of the Dark. I don't do it with every book, but I kind of enjoy it. I got to tell you. I mean, I'm sure some editors would not enjoy it, but I do. Okay. Here we go. It didn't take long for the cannibal with the broken nose to find them. What amazed Dez was the rapidity with which the injured cannibal tore through the forest. It shouldn't have surprised him, not after all he'd seen, but it did. It was as though the last vestiges of the old world refused to relinquish their hold on him, and as a result, his reason still recoiled when confronted with another testimonial to this new nightmarish existence. He knew Gentry's strength would give out before long, and he could hear the cannibals stealing through the forest behind them. Before, the son of a biscuit, I have to censor myself because I am a teacher, sorry. The book's not censored though, so feel free. All kinds of profanity in there. More than you need. Here we go. Had moved with the stealth of a timber wolf. And while the cannibal still ran with a surprising lack of noise, the rage and the broken nose were making him careless. Dez slowed to a trot, fingered the handle of the Ruger. He didn't want to use it, but he would if he had to. The noise of its report would give away their whereabouts, and he doubted the other two cannibals would allow the murder of one of their own to pass unavenged. Even worse, they'd be newly fed, newly empowered. Dez wouldn't have believed it had he not once witnessed it. For a time, he'd been a member of a struggling colony based in a network of caves along the Tippecanoe River. He'd been asleep, fitfully as always, when a barrage of screams had assaulted him and the others slumbering in a moist tunnel just uphill of the water. By the time Dez had disengaged himself from the woman he'd slept with that evening, and who'd insisted on slinging an arm over him as though to moor him to the slimy rock floor, the slaughter was already in full bloom. He'd stumbled out of the cave to find a middle-aged woman with curly brown hair, one of the leaders of the colony, spread-eagled on the ground with a cannibal's face buried in her split stomach. 3 other colonists were similarly laid out, each with cannibals grafted to them like skulking hyenas. Dez and another man had drawn their guns to blast away at the killers, but before they could fire, the cannibals had darted away into the night, or, in one case, leapt up to grasp an oak bough that hung 15 feet off the ground. If Dez had not seen it, he wouldn't have believed it. But the cannibal, surcharged by the flesh he'd just devoured, swung from the bough, landed nimbly on the grassy riverbank, and bounded into the forest with the agility of a jungle cat. The sound of Gentry stumbling brought Dez back to the present. Dez threw a look over his shoulder. Had the cannibal pursuing them eaten of Kenta or Rikichi before setting off after Dez? It was a vital question. Kenta and Rikichi are the 2 victims from the prior scene. Sorry about the spoiler, but we're early on in the book, right? Not too much. One other thing is I get a drink of water. If you hear like ambient noise, it's Michael Scott. One of my kids is watching The Office upstairs. Here we go. 1, he had no time to ponder. "Can't run anymore," Gentry panted. "Can't? You have a weapon?" Des demanded. His lungs were burning, but that was more from fear than fatigue. The only favors this ghastly lifestyle had done for him were hardening his muscles and expanding his endurance. "Just my knife," Gentry answered. "I use it to clean squirrels." "Get it out," Des told him. A flash of movement from their right, and then pain seared through Des's shoulder. Somehow he was on his knees, and the cannibal was laughing, and some instinct made Des flop down on his stomach, and it was a good thing because he heard a whistling sound, and the air he'd just vacated was rent by some fast-moving object. Des pushed to his hands and knees and thought, "Holy criminy, the bastard has a leather whip." Save Indiana Jones, Des had never seen a whip used as a weapon, but as he scrambled to his feet now and backed away from the grinning cannibal, who was smaller than the other two, but who appeared completely unhinged, Des decided the whip was uniquely suited to this new world. Lethal enough to inflict serious damage, yet relatively silent. A man skillful enough to wield it would have better reach than a man using a knife or a machete. Sure, a bow had better range, but as Des could attest, a lot could go wrong with a bow and arrow, because you needed space to shoot. The whip was whistling at him again. Des lunged sideways and only partially evaded the leather's sting. Cold fire scalded his hip, but he didn't think the denim of his jeans had been parted, unlike the lash to his shoulder, which he knew had flayed open the skin. Des unsheathed the machete. The grinning cannibal had shaggy black hair and a scraggly beard smeared with what could only be human viscera. So the bastard had eaten of Rikichi or Kenta before setting off after Des. Bad news. Des didn't comprehend the biology of it, but the experience by the river had taught him the effects of cannibalism were almost instantaneous, not unlike those old Popeye cartoons. Only instead of spinach creating bulging muscles, the ingestion of human tissue induced a maniacal power that was extraordinary as it was revolting. "Come now, kitty," the cannibal said, twirling the whip handle at his side. Des tried not to be hypnotized by the way the long, slender lash swirled and danced in the pre-dawn air. "Watch him," Gentry said. Des nodded, hoping Gentry had exercised the good sense to draw his knife. 2 against 1, they still didn't stand much of a chance, but if they were lucky, they might catch the cannibal off balance. "Tell you what," the cannibal said, the whip writhing at his side like a restless serpent. "I'll give you a head start, old man. 15-20 minutes even." The grin broadened. "I want to enjoy this meal." Des took in the cannibal's over-white teeth, the 2 pink gums. Telltale signs of cannibalism. No regular person was that healthy anymore. Only cannibals looked virile enough to star in toothpaste commercials. Of course, the starey darting eyes and the expression of lunatic glee would probably disqualify this man from most ad campaigns. "Not going anywhere," Gentry said. Des glanced at the older men and beheld a metal that hadn't been there before. Maybe they would live yet. "Fine, then," the cannibal said, nodding at Des. "I'll give you a chance to save your hide. You come back to the clearing and tell us where other survivors are. We'll let you live." "Maybe you should run that by Paul and Stomper," Des said. "Since you're obviously their little lackey." I use a different word here. It was juvenile and it was stupid, and had the exact effect for which Des had been striving. With a snarling growl, the cannibal swung the whip in a wild looping strike, and Des dove for the man's knees. Des slammed into the cannibal in a barrel roll violent enough to upend the man, and before the son of a gun could untangle his whip, Des swung the machete and buried it 2 inches deep in the man's calf. The cannibal squealed, pawed at the blade, which Des abandoned. Des somersaulted forward and reached back for the crossbow. Pivoting, he drew back the bow and took aim even as the cannibal fidgeted with a revolver. Des strode forward, leveled the crossbow at the cannibal's breastbone, and knowing he'd get no better opportunity, fired. The bolt split the man's sternum, the sound reminding Des of an axe striking a cord of ironwood. The cannibal let out a breathless grunt and grasped the impacted bolt. Des knew he couldn't wait. Cannibals possessed uncanny recuperative powers. He reached down and snagged one of the cannibal's scissoring feet. The man didn't seem to notice, only emitted a series of pitiful mewling sounds and fondled the fletching of the embedded bolt as though he couldn't decide whether to risk yanking it out or not. While the cannibal was thusly engaged, Des crouched, got hold of the machete handle, but the implement was slimed with blood. He swiped his hand on the butt of his jeans, ventured to grip the handle again, but it was still slippery. Des eyed the cannibal, whose lips were peeled back in agony. How long would the man lie there grimacing? Further, who was to say that Paul and Stomper weren't tromping their way toward them right now? Cannibals were voracious. They might not be content with Rikichi and Kenta. Time was short. Des slid his hand up his shirt sleeve, gripped the machete handle with his leather coat, and tugged on it. At first he worried it wouldn't come free. The edge of the blade seemed to be lodged in bone. Worse, the cannibal had realized what Des was up to and had begun to kick at him, albeit weakly. The cannibal's blood spurted over Des's forearms. Des ground his teeth, pulled on the machete. The leg from which he was attempting to wrest the machete suddenly jerked down, and for a moment Des lost his grip. He covered his palms with his sleeves, grasped the handle with both hands, and yanked up. The machete slurped loose from the calf meat, and Des nearly overbalanced. It occurred to him that if the cannibal abandoned the arrow that was lodged in his chest and instead removed the gun from his pocket, he could simply shoot Des and then all of this would be over. The image of the gun firing into his guts was enough to motivate Des. He gained his balance, took a couple unsteady strides, and stood over the cannibal. The man was peering up at him, teeth bared, a dull glaze of hatred in his narrowed eyes. He wanted with all his soul to murder Des, would do so in an instant if given the chance. Des raised the machete, and the cannibal's eyes widened. With a cry, Des slammed the machete into the cannibal's throat. The blade had apparently not been damaged when it lodged in the cannibal's leg, because it cleaved through the man's larynx like a prow through placid waters. The cannibal was nearly decapitated by the blow, the arterial spray shocking even to Des, who had slain more than one creature this way. He turned his head, but not before being enameled in blood. After a moment, Des eyed the man's crimson-stained chest, the fractured bolt poking out of it. He hated to waste a good arrow, but he would accept this trade-off, all things considered. Des finished the decapitation, stood panting. He became aware of Gentry gaping at him in the bluish light. "You killed him," Gentry said, his tone hushed. Des wiped the machete on the fabric of the cannibal's arm. "Thanks a lot for the help." And that's the end of the scene. So, I guess I should have mentioned that that was sort of violent. Yeah, the book, I like to write all kinds of horror. What are we up to? 18 minutes, so I better shut up soon. Okay, like 30 seconds. I like to write all kinds of horror. The novel I am finishing editing like this week, Marla, is like a mystery with a little police procedural and then like just downright terror, scary stuff. Siren and the Spectre is a ghost story. The Dark Game, kind of difficult to classify. Exorcist Falls, obviously demonic possession. Children of the Dark, coming of age. Dust Devils, vampire western. I like to explore everything. The Dismembered, which is coming from Cemetery Dance at some point. That is going to be like a historical horror. So I really like to do different things. This one, just FYI, is like action horror. Action dystopian horror. It is dystopian, it's got a bit of fantasy, obviously a bit of action and violence, some romance, adventure, suspense, buddy movie kind of thing. Everything. It's got it all. So, September the 8th it comes out. Thank you. I forgot to say, Sadie, thank you so much for having me. You're amazing. We love you. Thanks for listening to me tonight. Or today, whenever this airs. See you later. Bye-bye.